Hi, this is Nikisha Brown. So I would like to record and share week five expression reflection. I didn't choose a leader to leader article. Instead, I chose a leader of my choice. Her name is Sojourner Truth, and she was an anti-slavery abolitionist as well as a women's rights activist. And I've always been fascinated with her all my life. There's a speech that was recorded that is entitled Ain't I a Woman? That's not the original title of the speech, but after she did the speech, um, that's what it became known as. She did it at a convention back in, I want to say Akron, Ohio, or something like that. She kind of crashed. And so the two most famous recorded versions of the speech are by two different people, and they kind of contradict each other. And so the version that I used to perform was by a gentleman named Francis Gage. And that came out in, I believe, 1863. I believe. Yes. But anyway, his version comes out with her talking in a southern drawl. She starts out, "Where there, children?" And the irony in that is that she wasn't from the South. She was from New York. So most likely she didn't speak with a southern drawl. His version also had her seem very angry, very aggressive. And other people who were there at the convention said that that's not how she spoke. So his version is Francis Gage's inaccurate version, April 23rd, 1963, in the issue of the New York Independent. The other version that people claim is more accurate is by Marius Robinson's transcription, published June 21st, 1951, in the Anti-Slavery Bugle. So both are listed side by side under the SojournerTruthProject.com, in which I did share the link. One that explains the differences and discrepancies in the two speeches, and the other, you click on the bottom, it says compare the speeches, and it'll show them side by side. I've actually provided both links, so you don't have to do all of that. So both versions of the speech, what they have in common is that Sojourner is talking about women's rights. She's talking about, I can do the same thing as a man. I work as much, I lift as much. I'm out there putting my blood, sweat, and tears just like any man. So why does he get more rights than me? Why does he get more respect than me? I can eat as much when I can get it. And both versions point that out, and that's saying that food was scarce. She can always eat. Sometimes she might have had to choose between herself and her children. But when I can get it, I can eat as much. She said, "Look at my arms. I've planted and plowed and gathered into barns, and no man could head me." She also gets philosophical. There's someone there who says, women all caught up in the fix about this thing, what they call the intellect. Intellect ain't got nothing to do with this. And then she also someone says women shouldn't have as many rights as a man because God wasn't a woman. Excuse me, because Christ wasn't a woman. She says, but where does your Christ come from? He came from God and a woman. Man ain't had nothing to do with that. And so in both versions side by side, she says something similar in the version by Mr. Robinson. She said in Jesus wept and Lazarus came forth. And how come Jesus into the world? Through God who created him and woman who bore him. Man, where's your part? So it seems like Mr. Gage's version was just to make it more dramatic. I don't know whether to downplay her intelligence. I don't want to assume that. Making it southern, like, was to dummy it up, or making it aggressive was to, like, I don't know if that was to add emphasis in a positive way, or if that was to demean her fight and her struggle, to say like she was just another angry Negro. That I don't know. Um, but she also says that, if one woman alone could turn the world upside down, and she's making references to Eve, she's like, then all of us women together ought to be able to fix it. So she's not only speaking the word of truth, she's trying to mobilize the women. That was in a southern version by Mr. Gage. But um in the other version she says, I've heard the Bible and have learned that Eve caused man to sin. Well, if woman upset the world, do give her a chance to set it right side up again. The lady has spoken about Jesus, how he never spurned woman from him, and she was right. So anyway, she's getting pretty deep, like saying, you know, your justification for treating women like 10 steps behind is because Christ wasn't a woman, but Christ came from a woman. Man didn't have nothing to do with that. Basically, God in the woman. God put Christ in Mary's womb, and she had him. So to say that justification don't mean anything, and that kind of relates to a lot of what's going on in the world today, as far as how power organizations use their religious beliefs as an excuse to do bad behavior, as an excuse to oppress groups of people, whether it be Muslims or women or Christians or Jewish people, whatever. And if everyone was able to do whatever they want in the name of their religion, then terrorism would be worse. That means Israel and Palestine, they're going to be fighting for 600 more years. That means black churches would never have been able to survive the 1600s and the 1800s when they were burning churches and putting crosses in people's yard. So, getting to the actual questions that I'm supposed to ask. Um, the author is attempting to answer what? So I feel like Miss Sojourner is attempting to say that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Women are not going anywhere. Women have been here from the beginning of time. This country and this world wouldn't even be able to exist without a woman. We not only can do the same things men can do, we have our own few secrets up our sleeve that we can do that only a woman can do as well. She's trying to say time's up, even way before the time's up. This is 200 years, 150 years before time's up. She's trying to say, give us our just due because we've earned it. We've come over in ships. We've had to live in a big house. We've been raped and had to raise those bastard kids or see them taken away, living in a big house without us, or sold or killed. We've seen our husbands hung, abused, our families broken up, being sold and traded for animals, for objects, but we're here. So give us our just due. And now that the Negroes are fighting for their rights and civil rights, it's not just enough to free black men. You have to free everyone. You can't say, oh, now you can vote, but not everyone gets to vote. So I think her purpose was just to say that we are here, we're united, and we're not going anywhere. I think the purpose of the articles was just to stir it up a little bit to say, this is what she supposedly said, and this is how it got recorded. If I wanted to get real racial about it, I could dig more deeper and say, why would the version that's the most popular version and a well publicized version and a version that comes up as soon as you Google be the version that's inaccurate? The version that depicts her as an angry black woman, as opposed to a woman with something to say. Even in that version towards the end when she says if a woman alone could turn the world upside down, shouldn't we all here together be able to turn it right side up and get it back on track or something of that effect? She's still saying we don't have to fight. We could fight spiritually and emotionally, but it don't have to be a battle. If it's messed up, one person messed it up, then shoot, it's all of us here. We can't get it back together, you know? Um How has her ideas applied to me in my leadership quest? She helps inspire me. She helps me see that you can overcome anything. And sometimes I forget and sometimes I don't believe. But seeing what she came through, I couldn't imagine being born in slavery. I reckon being born in the North was way better or different from the South, but still, to have to like steal her freedom. She ran away and then have to go back and buy her son. One of her sons was lost for good. She never saw again. So she inspires me just in a sense to say that no matter what I'm going through, people have gone through worse. And it doesn't diminish what I go through in life, but it's to say that there is another side. It's not to do a pity party or to compare who suffered the most. It also helps me see that you can have more than one leader Right now, most people in here are Harriet Tubman or Rosa Parks. With the men, you hear Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and we never get to hear about the other pioneers. Right now, Netflix has a story of Madam C.J. Walker, one of the first black millionaires ever. She wasn't the first one, but she became known as the first one, first self-made made millionaire. There were others at that time, but not as famous. Um, in my leadership, it shows that we can all succeed without necessarily being in competition. I look at the music industry. It's like if you're not Beyonce, you're nothing else. Where when I grew up in my 20s, you could have a Beyonce and a Monica and a Maya, and you could have a vast variety of R&B singers, and one succeeding didn't take away from the other one. So what Sojourner does is remind me that there was a lot of women during the civil rights movement and the women's movement. It didn't just happen from one or two people. Yes, there was the Angela Davis and the Maya Angelous, but just like Maya Angelou is famous for her poems, there's a Nikki Giovanni, Ego Trippin', one of my favorite poems. So there's a lot of different people out there who, as a collective, help move us forward. And what Sojourner teaches me and how it helps in my leadership quest is to just keep your eyes on a prize, keep the goal in front of you. Sometimes it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. Sometimes it's the other way around. You got to take what works and leave out what doesn't. And just to keep fighting, reinvent yourself, improve yourself, alter your mind, open your mind. What one, two questions would I like to ask the author and his or her ideas of what they have written? So again, like I said, I browsed through a few different articles. I had a specific one already printed out from weeks ago, excuse me, months ago now, February, when I was going to do her at a Black History thing at work, and I ended up doing my own. I wasn't sure if I was going to do Ain't I a Woman, because I didn't have it completely memorized, but I knew enough of it to get through it. Or if I was going to just do it on my own. So I ended up doing my own, but Ain't I a Woman stayed on my mind. And I actually, before all this quarantine stuff happened, thought about what can I do for Mother's Day or something to still make it into Women's Pride so that I can still honor Miss Truth. So I would like to ask the authors, what was the significance of mentioning more than one version besides the fact of, oh yeah, there's more than one version, so you can know for your knowledge. Um, was it more of a conspiracy theory? Hey, some of the versions don't give her props, they don't give her credit, because I've learned through history and time that there are a lot of famous poets and writers and novelists, even musicians, who wrote things and didn't get credit for it. Because they were black, because they were poor, because they were unknown, uneducated, ignorant, many different reasons. Um, so, with a significance to mention, she never published the poem, I mean, excuse me, the speech herself. Was it to say, the version that we know the most is the most inaccurate version, according to some, and the version that doesn't depict her in the best light? Who knows? I would like to ask her, how did she do it? How did she persevere at a time when it was hard just being alive, being a person, first of all, then being a black person, then being a woman, then being a woman in slavery, then being a freed woman going back to slavery to try to free other people when you could have just went about your business and said peace. You didn't have to do that. Um, to be in love and see the man you love beaten in front of you, almost killed and taken away to never see him again. How did that feel? How did you keep going on? To marry again later and have a son and he be taken away and you try to find him and he's communicating with you, then he stops. As a mother, how were you able to move on? How were you able to keep your fight going with the velocity and the ferociousness that you did? That pain, how do you compartmentalize it in order to still lead a group of people who are following you, who are expecting you to shine no matter what? Just how did you do it? um I would like to ask her, what would she be doing right now in 2020? What would she think about the world? What would she think about Donald Trump? What would she think about the innovations we've made, racially, culturally, sexually, um, the women empowerment, being sexual beings. Would she embrace that, or does she think that puts us back 200 years? Women in commerce and in executives in business, women with just as many law degrees or MBAs or engineers as men. Not as many as men, let me take that back. It's still unequal, but it's way more now than it has ever been. Would she be happy, or would she say it's not enough? There's still wage discrepancies between athletes and endorsements, campaigns, advertising, the corporate world. It's still in inequality. So I just would want to know, what would you do different, girlfriend? Look has changed since 1863. It's 2020. What period of that time would you say, boom, this is when y'all really was doing it? Would have been the 50s, when people started getting better than normal jobs, when black people from the South started migrating to California to work on the railroad and factories and not infirmary, the refineries, and have better careers. What you said was the 60s, when you had Dr. King and Malcolm X. What you say is the 70s, when we had the Black Panthers and Fight the Power. The 80s, where we have music, where people started rebelling and doing what they want? Or would you feel like we went 200 years backwards in the 80s because of the introduction of crack cocaine into the inner cities and tearing up the black home? I just want to know, what would she say? Would she high five Hillary? Would they smoke a joint? Would she slap her? What would she think about Sarah Palin and Kellyanne Conway and Condoleezza Rice, Kamala Harris? What would she think about London Breed or AOC? Some of our young, innovative. What would she think about Nancy Pelosi? Like, would she be proud to see that the strongest woman in the country is Nancy Pelosi? Follow used to be Hillary was up there, Condi was up there. I would have a lot of questions, to be honest. I'd have a lot of questions. I want to thank Miss Sojourner for pioneering what she pioneered. And I just want to end with doing a little piece of Ain't I Woman, even though it's not the right version. Where there children, where there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the niggas of the South and the Negroes of the North all talking about rights. The white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what that's here talking about? That man over there said that women needs to be helped in the carriages and lifted over ditches and had the best of everything. Well, nobody ever helps me in the carriages or over mud puddles or gives me the best any place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arms. I plowed and planted and gathered in barns and no man could hit me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much as a man and eat as much as a man when I could get it and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I born 13 children and seen them most all sold into slavery. And when I cried with my one mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. What is it they call it? Intellect. Yeah, that's it, honey. Well, what that got to do with women's rights or niggas' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me get my low half measure full? Then that man over there in black right there. He said women can't have as many rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Well, where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? He came from God and a woman. Man ain't had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn this world upside down all alone, then all us together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now that they asking to do it, the men better let them. Obliged to you for hearing me. And now old Sojourner ain't got nothing more to say. Thank you.